So, what kind of encouragement or principles might you guys give if a couple finds themselves in a similar situation, maybe because of medical reasons or other physical situations that come up? This physical intercourse is maybe impossible or at least very difficult. What what advice would you give them, and what steps could they take to keep leaning in on their relationship even during that season?
And I would even throw in sexual trauma there
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
they say 1 out of 5 women have experienced sexual trauma in their lifetime, and that can affect her ability to feel safe in the bedroom and cause pain in intercourse. And I think the whether it be that situation, a physical situation like Nicole described, or a couple coming off of an abstinence period, and like how do we get back into the bedroom? What I would say is start slowly. Okay. Especially like for the abstinence period and going through a, a period of sobriety and reintegration of the marriage. That's an opportunity to repeat the courtship and maybe do it right the second time because maybe boundaries were crossed the first time. Um, I'd recommend, and this is something that we did for us as we discovered, okay, what does this look like for us as reintroducing non-sexual touch first, okay?
Yeah.
And we started using a technique called sensate focus, which is a multi-step process of learning to give and receive pleasure. And that begins with non-sexual touch and then slowly incorporate sexual touch, then finally intercourse. The important thing on that is it's usually presented a 3-stage process of one time, second time, third time, but it's okay to hang out on one of those steps and to keep practicing it. And something I had to really learn as someone who had been a sex addict was to really, this is something I prayed, God, teach me how to receive pleasure outside of sex.
Yeah. Yeah. It's good.
And specifically outside of intercourse, because sex is so much bigger than intercourse. Dr. Snyder, in his book Love Work Maything, says in really good sex, orgasm should be like dessert at the end of a good meal, memorable perhaps, but not the reason you went out for dinner.
Yeah.
And so, when we limit the sexual union to just intercourse, and I think we're setting ourselves up for disappointment.
Totally.
And not realizing everything that God designed in that. And again, going back to the Song of Solomon, you can kind of get a lot of the imagery of what sex should be about from looking at that book. And so for me, it was putting aside that idol of what sex looks like and learning how to receive pleasure, starting with the non-sexual parts of it, because that can be very pleasurable, but because we got so focused on the intercourse, we tend to ignore that, especially for the addict, that goes on the shelf. And so learning that, and the sensate focus is as you are the person giving the non-sexual touch, experiencing what that feels like. And then when you're on the receiving end, what that feels like.
Yeah.
And so you're just kind of expanding the aperture there. And for the woman in this case, that really is a way to begin to feel safe. That's not all about intercourse. So I caution the couple not to jump right back into intercourse, take it slowly. And really, like Nicole had said, that emotional connection precedes the physical connection. So there's this process called simmering that Snyder talks about, of where it starts at, when you wake up in the morning with whispering sweet nothings, to a hug out the door, to a love note, to a call that I'm thinking about you, that sets the stage for what may happen later in that evening. But if the guy expects just to jump into the sack without doing any of the work to get there, then you're not setting the stage.
Yeah.
So.
Mm-hmm. I kind of want to springboard off that as well. So we had to be really creative because, like I said, I lost a lot of my physical inputs for sexual pleasure. So actually, I mean, a lot of what we've had to do for me is actually do more of the sensate focus of doing, like, I really like it when Brent takes his fingertips and just runs it down my arm or runs it down my leg, nothing sexual. but that brings me pleasure. And so that became part of our,
Yeah.
our occasional lovemaking, because I had to receive pleasure somehow, even though the other inputs weren't working. And that actually worked really well. And I like in Nagoski's book, Come As You Are, she says pleasure is the measure. And what I take from that is the importance of just enjoying pleasure for pleasure's sake.
Yeah.
I'm going into the bedroom, I'm wanting to be with this person that I love. It's not about the outcome. It's about just being together with each other, of connecting. We usually spend time talking ahead of time, before we even start touching each other, because for me, that's how I wind down my brain. Sex isn't going to be very fun if I'm doing going through the 20 to-do list things that I still have to do when I get up, and so winding down my brain and having that emotional connection. If you guys don't mind, I do want to spend a moment talking specifically to women who experience pain during intercourse. Pain is not normal. And if you have pain during intercourse, definitely talk to your partner about some non-penetrative options for being intimate, and seek out medical help. For example, a pelvic floor specialist can work with a woman to be more aware of their pelvic floor muscles and to strengthen those muscles, and also teach you how to relax them prior to intercourse. I already mentioned the practice of mindfulness, the Better Sex Through Mindfulness, Dr. Lori Brado's book, really kind of guides you through different exercises of being fully present in the moment. She goes through this whole thing about eating a raisin, which is just pretty mind-blowing. I would have never thought to eat a raisin that way, but if you really focus on your food, it's like you enjoy it in a whole different way. And it's the same thing with your body. If you can just tap into what you're feeling, tap into that sensation of, what does it feel like when I'm tense in my pelvic floor? What does it feel like when I'm relaxed? And just have a lot of grace for yourself too. I mean, if you have something that comes in that says, well, for example, if you're in the middle of lovemaking and you can't have an orgasm, well, does that mean you're broken? No, it doesn't mean you're broken. It means it's just not working this time. Maybe you need to change the context. Maybe you need to have more foreplay. But treating even the failures, I'm putting in quotes, for those who are listening to the podcast, even the failures in the bedroom are really not failures. You want to look at that from a lens of grace and say, okay, well, let's just try something different next time. And then for postmenopausal women, obviously one of the problems is the changes in the vaginal tissue. Vaginal estrogen is really great, and it works locally. Very little is absorbed. So even with my cancer history, my doctors have allowed me to use that, which is great. But if it's not an option, there are a number of moisturizers that can provide some relief. There's Replens that you can just buy over the counter. Reverie, which is a hyaluronic acid suppository, which can help as well. And then Beeswax hydration pearls. These were all things that were recommended to me that I had tried. Those are available on Amazon. If one doesn't work, try another one. Another recommendation that I received was for CBD melts. And again, this is a vaginal suppository. What the CBD can do is help relax that pelvic floor. You use it about 20 minutes before intercourse, and it can help relax so that you don't have the pain during intercourse. I know vibrators can be a taboo subject for a lot of people.
Sure.
But I'm just going to say Ted and Diane recommended them, which kind of shocked me at the time, but they're really great as a tool to increase the blood flow and natural lubrication. And of course, there's a whole slew of different kind of lubricants. So again, if one doesn't work, try a different one. Just with the caveat that if you are someone who uses a condom as birth control, stick to the water-based ones, because anything else can degrade the condom.
That was like a master class.
Yeah, I mean, I appreciate you bringing
awesome.
it up, because I do think it's an avoided topic that people are just like, well, I guess we're not gonna have sex because it hurts, versus exploring options. And obviously, and I think you need to do things only that you're comfortable with. And so if some of the things Nicole brought up are outside of your comfort or even theology, it's like, hey, no big deal. I think the point is, there are things we can do to explore our sexuality that go beyond intercourse, because we may have gotten so focused on that it has to be penis, vagina, that's what sex is. And outside of that, we haven't had sex. It's like, well, no, as a married couple, there's a lot of ways we can connect sexually that may go beyond that or look different than that,
Right.
especially in some seasons. And, the thing I was going to add, my only personal experience kind of along these lines was, obviously in the recovery of my wife from pregnancies. And unfortunately, I was only in a more healthy place for our last pregnancy, where there's a season of abstinence, of not able to have sex. And for the first 3 kids, it was just like, can we hurry up and get through this so we can get back to me having sex? And it was very selfish and pleasure driven. In the 4th pregnancy or aftermath, I was able to finally look at what am I really looking for? Because I knew I was finally getting enough tools to know that it was more than just the pleasure. And I realized there were things like how much I value physical touch. And so it was like even just giving my wife more back rubs in that season, which she loved, it did something for me of like, we're touching, we're close, we're physical. And in a sense, we're intimate as a couple in a way that we are with nobody else in the world.
Yeah.
That met a part of my need. And I also realized how much sex validated my sense of worthiness to her. Now, she didn't ever say that in sex, but I had connected in my brain, sex means I'm valuable to her. And so I'm able to realize that and say to her, I'm looking to feel valued to you. And obviously we had babies, and like that wasn't always easy for her. And I wouldn't say that hopefully in a selfish way, but it did communicate a need to her that then there were ways she could be aware of. I can communicate to my husband how much he means to me without having to have sex to prove it. And those things, like, I feel like we grew so much because we couldn't have sex. I had to figure out what was I really looking for. And I only bring that up to say if you're in a season where sex is limited or impossible, it is an opportunity, like Nicole brought up, to see what can I learn about myself, about my needs, about what I'm really looking for. Because yes, pleasure is a part of it, but it's only a part. And we have a lot of other areas we can explore and a lot of other ways we might receive pleasure that don't just have to do with intercourse. So I think there's a lot that couples can explore. That doesn't mean it's going to be an easy or straightforward journey, but I think it's worthwhile because it draws us together and it'll bring out new things in our relationship that we haven't had a chance to work out before.